Hey, I'm Tanya Franklin, and welcome to Tricks My Dog Taught Me, a podcast for lighthearted and occasional deep conversations revolving around family and friends, and my journey as a dog mom to my little guy, Zach the Toy Poodle, which prompted me to self-publish my first book, Shit My Dog Taught Me, where I share some of my insights through poetry and weekly life lessons. So, for today's episode, it'll be all about week 17's poem, Grounded in Fear. Something we all may experience at some point in our lives. So, for many of us, fear is an uninvited guest, but as we move through life, our relationship with that guest changes. So, today I'm honored to sit down with a woman who I initially met as a colleague. But quickly became a friend, and she's definitely navigated change, both personal and cultural. And she's a member of the generation of Black women who have been the backbone of the community, and certainly someone who I would consider to be fearless. But today, what I want to do is have a candid conversation about what it's like to look fear in the eye, not just as a barrier, but as a teacher. So, if you're listening, please help me welcome to the show the incredible Ife Williams. And Ife, I thank you for being here to share some light and your truth. And for those who are listening, which you may not know, but I'm going to reveal, is that my worst fear happened. We were recording this episode previously and the Wi-Fi went off. And so I said, that's okay. It's right on time for this episode dealing with fears. So we're back at it with some brand new questions. And so before we get into the heavy stuff, I want to share week 17's poem, Grounded in Fear. Less ground when fears creep in with uncertainty of what? The unknown? On notice to suspect anything uncomfortable. Run away when what sweeps over you feels real. Are fears groundless? So, Ife, when you
Hello.
hear the word fear, especially at this stage in your life, what's the first image or the feeling that pops into your mind?
Well, at this point in my life, I look at fear as an incident or experience that requires the police, the fire, an ambulance. That's fear. Anything short of that is just a phobia. Where they say fear, false evidence appearing real, false
Mm-hmm.
evidence appearing real. And what I find, I noticed in your poem, you use the term groundless, that a lot of
Mm-hmm.
things that I fear happening are not really grounded in reality. I mean, there's really no harm attached to it. The harm is in my head, thinking that something terrible is going to happen when it really doesn't. So it is
Mm-hmm.
false evidence appearing real. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And I know for me, I would say that I definitely can identify with that. There's so many things that I will have played through in my mind. What if this happens? What if that happens? And even, of course, in present day, I've gotten much better at that with fear. But I will say that something that I've learned for myself in present day is not allowing it to fully consume me. So even if I just hold on to it for a little bit, and then I'll ask myself, why am I feeling this way? Is this a valid feeling? Because I think normally it's okay if like, so for example, if there's certain obstacles that I'm doing with a Spartan race or something like that, I might have some fear, and it is a real fear, a fear of getting injured. And I think that that's plausible. But at the same
Right.
time, I will say to myself, okay, have I practiced for this? Have I had this injury happen before? What am I doing to make sure that I'm safe? And so I go through all of that. Do I feel comfortable? Is it just me in my head? So a lot of times I'll just go through a series of questions to try to get myself out of that line of thinking. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't work all the time, but I will say that it works more times than not. And I mean, I'm talking about present day, but in my 20s, I've definitely had my fair share of fears, just not being accepted or being rejected, and rejected not necessarily in love, yeah, that partially, but even, you know, looking for a job and thinking that, oh, this is going to be the perfect fit, and that fear that I won't get hired, or just having certain situations that have happened in my life where I felt mocked or bullied or something like that. And my fear of, am I going to be able to stand up to this person? Am I going to be able to get through that? And so I would say in present day, I'm definitely grateful that it's shifted a lot and that I feel more empowered. Probably doing all of this fitness stuff has helped me out a lot. But I'm just wondering for you, what's something that may have terrified or just caused you fear in your 20s or maybe even 30s that just seems to be insignificant for you now?
Hmm. It's a good question. But before I get to that question, you mentioned a very powerful tool, and that
Okay.
is the self-talk.
Mm,
How you talk yourself through situations and
mhm,
asking yourself questions and identifying what is the source of this. And if you get to that point where you can have that conversation with yourself, it really does work as you have found, it really diminishes the fears or phobias. Uh, in my 20s, it's a long time ago, 20s and 30s, man, I had a myriad of fears, all kinds of things, making it through school, supporting myself. I think most of my fears came around relationships and men because
mhm,
those 20s for women, that's the age that we're ready to reproduce, and you get and it is it sorry, it's these hormones that drive you. I mean, it's real. It's not just your head telling you, "Oh yeah, you've got to get married, you've got to have a baby and by any means necessary."
mhm,
And I know when I got to the end of my 20s and going in my 30s, I was like, "Well, I don't know." I mean, today people are having babies in their 50s, but that it's it's a gamble. Well, it's always a gamble when you're pregnant, but the older you are,
mhm,
the more risk you're taking. So my fear was not being able to, have children, be married. And because I was driven, it led me into situations with men that weren't so healthy.
mhm,
And I've been told and I've experienced that women hear what they want to hear, and a lot of times those red flags are present. I have a friend that says, "Yeah, I saw the red flags, but they look like red hearts to me." And we have the tendency to rationalize and justify situations that aren't really healthy, you know. But I had an ulterior motive,
mhm,
I gotta do this. So a lot of my fears, like you said, when it's bad, when it leads you into making decisions that aren't for your own good. So I think that's where most of my fears lie. And and then they also say you create your reality. hmm And by having these fears of not having the appropriate man, not being married, not having kids, I think on some level, I was kind of manifesting situations because I would be attracted to people and even if they were healthy, I find on some level of sabotaging
mm,
relationships that may may have worked in order to I thought was the best thing at that moment, but hindsight, it wasn't. So I think that's where the majority of my fears revolved, was around the
Mm.
relationship and having children. Mhm.
Mm. And I would say I definitely could see that because when I'm thinking back to my 20s, that focus on wanting that relationship and uh, having this timeline in my head. And
Mhm.
I think the what ifs would creep in. What if I'm not married by this time? What if this doesn't happen by this time? What if I don't have the dream job by this time? And so uh, allowing myself to spiral. And something I will say also is that it wasn't just me, that on some level, it was people around me, family, friends who it seemed like maybe they had it figured out. Or certainly there were times where I will say it's not so much that my mom like totally pushed like you have to be married, you have to have kids or anything like that. But I will say that once I was in a relationship, then it was like, well, when are you going to get married? Well, the clock's ticking. Well, when is this going to happen? The clock's ticking. And so even with that, I would say that my mom, she had certain fears. And while I understood them and why she had those fears, that I think sometimes she might have projected them unknowingly onto me. And so that's something that I also think about as well, that now that I am a mother, I want to make sure that I'm not passing my fears on to Quinn. Like she is doing track and she was doing these hurdle box jumps. She set it up herself because I let her come to the gym with me on the weekends, and she sets up like which are normally the boxes that you use for box jumps, but she's jumping over the boxes. And I'm over on the treadmill doing sprints with my best friend, and I'm just looking at her jump these boxes. And in my head and in my heart is just like and I'm looking at her, and the fear is just bubbling up inside of me. But I just said to myself, if she doesn't look fearful, why am I going to project this fear on her? She's in an area where they have a turf. She's young, so even if she were to fall, she'll probably just pop back up. But at the same time, I just thought about, I mean, that's that instance, but I think sometimes from flying to driving to just going to another state or country, these were things that my mom had some fear about. I mean, she's gotten, I would say, better in age, but I know that I didn't learn how to drive until I was older than I wanted to be. I didn't take my first flight until I was older than I wanted to be. And so while I don't want Quinn to just be out there doing whatever. I mean, I want her to do trial and error. At the same time, I want to make sure I'm not passing down certain fears. And so I bring that up
Mhm.
because I'm wondering for you, are there certain things that maybe when you were younger you feared, or that you see certain fears out there and you want to make sure that you're not passing it down? I know you speak highly about your nieces, but you're not passing that down to other women in your life.
Well, I think it's a lot involved here. On the one level, there's conscious fears, like you said, things that your mother was consciously afraid of and passing down to you, right? But then, and I think this is very important for Black people, they're unconscious fears. We talk about generational trauma. Dr. Leary did a book, Post Traumatic Slave Syndrome, and how the fear of enslavement and of punishment and of dying is passed down from generation to generation. That's passed down through the womb. And scientists are proving it now that this is real. Do you
Mm,
have that going on? And I ran into one interesting study. W- They said Black people are afraid of the police regardless of their socioeconomic level,
Mm.
you know, because it's a generational fear of someone in power hurting us, you know? So you do have those fears, and that's something that we have to work through. We really do. Some people like Cornel West, he says, "If you black, you need therapy."
Mm.
And James
Mhm.
Baldwin said, "If you're black and you're not angry, you need therapy."
Mm. Mm.
Something something's wrong with you.
You suppressing might be suppressing that anger.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Francis Cress Welsing said the same thing, you know.
Mhm.
We don't need to talk about anything until we talk about fear and what it's doing to us as a people in this present moment. What is it stopping
Mm.
us from doing? What is it stopping us from being? Just this irrational and it really isn't an irrational fear if you look at history,
Mhm.
right? With the lynchings, the reign of terror after slavery, all up to police brutality, Black Lives Matter. So this is not something that we're imagining. This is real life fear that we
Mm.
have to deal with. And then we talk about those conscious fears that's passed down to us. I can't really remember my mother being afraid of anything. I know she never learned how to drive, but I always looked at that as a power issue.
Mhm.
Women who don't drive, even men who don't drive, you know, to have somebody, always have somebody to chauffeur you around. I don't know if she was afraid of it, but she just never drove. Um, I can't remember her ever stating that she was afraid of something. I think maybe she was afraid of losing my father
Mm.
because sometimes his behavior was questionable, and she would rationalize it away, you know, like, I don't know, did it really happen? Did it not happen? You know,
Mm.
just to stay in the relationship, you know? What I was thinking about this week with the Epstein files, I was like, I wonder what kind of conversation Hillary has with Bill.
Mm.
What do you talk about? You know, and all I can think of is the elephant in the room. You just act like, you know, Monica never existed. You know, I was never there. You just don't talk about those things.
Mhm.
Again, and that's again part of the female track, trying to hold on to that relationship, trying to act like things didn't exist. And I think for a big part, that was my mother's thing. Just act like it didn't exist. Hmm.
Mm. And I mean, even with that idea of acting like something doesn't exist, I guess it's the fear of what may happen if it's brought to light.
Hmm.
And I mean, of course, I never had an opportunity to meet your mom, but I know that within my family, that especially like with my grandmom, my maternal grandmom, that there were things that were going on with my grandfather that they weren't clearly brought to light until after the passing of the both of them. I mean, when I say brought to light, I mean to me.
Right,
That
right,
there were probably people who already knew stuff, but I think that part of it is, oh, I don't want to break down the family. This is a time where we just stay together. We just put endure. And so I think sometimes it's the fear of the image being shattered, and people, especially if they look and say, wow, you're just such a wonderful family. And it seems like
right.
everything is just wonderful.
Uh-huh.
And we don't want to shatter that image. So rather than shatter the image, we'll just sweep certain things,
Right.
under the table, but I mean something I want to bring up is just like from a spiritual standpoint as well, is that I remember doing transcendental meditation and getting my mantra from you, and how that was something that is still therapeutic for me, especially if I'm going through certain fears. I mentioned how I associate it sometimes when I'm doing obstacle course races. There was this one where it wasn't the race, it was in preparation for the race. And I'm climbing over this fence that is probably about at least a solid 10 feet. I actually have a video of of me doing this, and it wasn't me by myself, it was me with my trainer at the time. And so I'm able to climb up it, and as soon as I put, one leg over and I looked down, I just panicked, and I immediately thought, "I'm gonna fall," and he's like, "I'm not gonna let you fall. You got it. You're good." But the only thing that helped, I won't say the only thing, but one of the things that helped me in that moment was in my head, just telling myself, "You're okay. You're okay." So even in having a mantra in that way that you're all right, nothing's gonna happen. Stop focusing on what you think's gonna happen with a negative outcome. You've got this. You're training for this. And so I'm just wondering for you, like whether it be a mantra or something, a spiritual practice or
Yeah.
something, do
Mhm.
you have something? Because obviously, I won't say obvious because people don't necessarily know that, but I do pray as well. And I certainly believe in God, a higher power. I know it's different for different people, but I'm wondering, do you have something that helps to anchor you if the world feels chaotic, or there might be a frightening moment where you might need to call the police. I know you said that's when fear comes in.
Mm. I think you brought up the challenge most of us have, and that's with those ants.
Mm.
Annoying negative thoughts
Mhm. Mhm.
and trying to settle them. There was a cartoon, a Ziggy cartoon, and he was on top of a cliff. He's getting ready to ski down, and his brain is like, "You can do this. You've trained for this. It's not that high. You can handle it. Just go ahead." And then Ziggy looks up and he says, "My brain is trying to kill me."
Mm.
And it's true. I mean, some of the things that go through my head, I'm like, what? If we did this, what would happen? So, as you mentioned in the beginning, that practice of self-talk, that is powerful. To talk yourself down. And what I have to do, my mantra in those real crazy times is everything is in divine order. Everything is in divine order. Everything works out for me. I'm okay. There's nothing to fear. I'm all right. I am safe. And I have to bring myself down, you know, with those things. In terms of other practices, of course, is transcendental meditation. I meditate twice a day. And I can still go from 0 to 100. One of the students told me, they said, "Maybe you need to meditate 3 times a day." I'm like, "Maybe you're right, yo." A couple of years ago, I started doing tapping, and
Tap dancing?
tapping,
Okay, enlighten me.
it's a practice. It's called, tapping, and actually, it's a whole organization. They have a summit every year, and what it is that you have these pressure points throughout your body. You have hundreds of pressure points, and it's actually just tapping onto those pressure points, right, that calm the body down, right, top of the head. And a lot of people do tapping. Iyanla Van
Mm.
Zandt is one. She's a tapper. And I started doing tapping, and that has really proved very effective, especially with emotional situations and getting through them. And even it's like things like grief, anger, all of them. you can just get through it with just that basic technique. So yeah, you can go online and see it's TAPPING. And
Okay.
one of the summits I went to that really hit home with me, there was a lady giving a testimony. Her child had was killed in one of the first shootings. Forgot what it was. What was one of the first ones? The little kids got shot.
Mm.
I'm blanking on where it was. That's a shame. There was so many of them. But anyway, after it, one of the teachers of tapping went by her house to visit her, and they taught her the technique. And she said that she was able to bring herself to forgiveness
Mm.
for that boy who killed her only child.
Mm.
So it is a powerful practice. So I tap once a day, and of course the prayer, church. It takes a lot because there's so much going on now. It really is, and things can be so upsetting. Just go through a normal day and just things happen and just upset you. So it's something that, it's not a one and done. It's like an all day thing, and checking in during the day. How KYW on the
Mhm.
10s and the 5s, how they check in. It's have to go check on myself. Are you okay? What's going on? How do you feel? What happened? Are you all right? Do you feel safe? I have to kind of talk to myself and bring myself in on a daily basis. It's a shame that we live in such terrifying times that we have to do these things, but then like on the positive is that it's wonderful that we do have these tools. And one that you use quite regularly is exercise.
Mhm.
hmm And I notice when I'm really, really bound up, I love to spin. So spinning, the treadmill. I also love the elliptical and step aerobics. I think what it is I like the music and I like groups. I'm not one of these people who can put a bicycle in my house because all that's going to do is hold my laundry. But I like to go to the gym. I like to talk to people, being there. I tell people I'm an athlete in my mind, not the Olympic type athlete, more of a gym rat athlete, you know.
Mhm.
But that really, really helps. If I can make myself get off the couch and go to the gym, I'm usually whatever's going on with me, soon as I go in there, get on the machine 10 minutes later, getting those endorphins going, I just brings me right down. We got to do all of these things.
Oh,
Mhm.
absolutely. I feel like that definitely allows a lot of fears or negative energy just slide right off of me. And I mean, I just want to bring up something else because you mentioned present day that we're in 2026 and it's a real economic squeeze right now. And
Yeah.
for the general public, but certainly I think Black women that this last decade that we have been kind of under a threat. Do you feel like there is like kind of like this luxury that we once had that it's now kind of gone and that a lot of the fears are starting to bubble up even more so in present day. Because I think at one point it was like, oh, uh, in terms of schooling and from a statistical standpoint and who's doing what. And not that it's a race in that sense, but I think that at this point there seems to be more fears that are presenting themselves.
Mhm. Well, we have as a people, we have been under duress for 400 years. And I know in one sense, yeah, over 3,000 Black women have lost their jobs since Trump went into office, probably a little before then. And in that case, yes, many, many women are suffering. And then you have your single-headed household. Most of them are women, and with the cut in SNAP benefits and housing, yes, but I think Black women are under uh, extraordinary duress in this present moment. But as a people, we've always kind of been under the wire. I remember the first election when Trump won, everybody was all upset and confused. And my pastor said, "We've been through bad presidents before." We have. We're going to make it. And then, every time somebody complains about, Trump now, it's like, well, it's 3 more years, 3 more years. But what what bothers me the most these days is the people who supported him because we
Mhm.
don't know who they are. Are they the people on our job, people sharing the office with us, people in the supermarket? We don't know who we're dealing with. We thought we knew our neighbors, and we don't. So for a lot of women who look to their neighbors and friends for support are now questioning, is that support really there? Are these people really for us in these times? But yeah, these are extraordinary times, and we're doing the best we can with them.
Mhm. So I'm wondering with that, and you mentioned being under duress, how do you keep that from hardening you and wondering who's who and who's supporting and
Right.
all of that? How do you make sure that it doesn't harden your heart toward the world, or does it?
It does, you know? It does. That's the way of the world. As Earth, Wind, and Fire said, child is born with a heart of gold. Way of the world makes that heart grow cold.
Mm,
I think earlier in my life, in my 20s and late 30s, I was very, very negative.
mm.
I was filled with a lot of hate. Um, but as I get older, it's like, what's the point? It's just it's harming me on a spiritual level. It's keeping me from going where I want to go. And these people are still doing the same thing. It's not anything new, right? So it's those spiritual practices. And then I think of one scripture, wear the world like a loose garment. Yes, these people are existing. Yes, they're doing things, but what does that have to do with me? I have to stay here. I have to stay here, and do what I can in my little realm to help myself and other people, you know. Um, but you do get hardened, It's like James Baldwin said, what we need to look at are those people who aren't affected, who, just la la la, everything is fine. Mm, something wrong there. What's wrong?
Ooh, I feel like you're talking to me, because it's not that I will say that a lot of people who interact with me, they've even commented on, "You always seem so happy," or "You always look on the bright side of things." That doesn't mean I don't reflect and
Right.
that I'm not upset about certain things. I
Mhm.
just try not to make that my focus, but I do wonder sometimes if people are they shake their head like, why is she always seems to be?" But, even in just talking about what's going on today, something else that's going on, and it's not new, but I think it's become more prevalent is artificial intelligence, and how it's managing everything from our healthcare system to our history. Even when you do a Google search, a lot of times it'll give you a chat bot if you want to talk with a chat bot
Mm,
about something. So I'm wondering if you have any type of fear associated with that, where there once was a time, even and not to make it a race thing, but even the nuances of the Black experience and
right.
how certain information is being skewed,
Mhm.
or it's lost or mistranslated through artificial intelligence, and not even just with Black
Mhm.
experience, but
Mhm.
even with women, and certainly just with people at large. Something that I learned is the idea and behind a lot of these chatbots is that it wants to make you happy. So sometimes it even makes up information that's not totally
It
true. And then it's
hallucinates.
just, yes, and it's just out there. And we're not even just talking about doing
It
searches. There
hallucinates.
once was a time when there was this video, and I'm sure it's still out there, and it was a
Mhm.
reel, but the reel was created using AI. So these weren't even real people,
Mhm, mhm,
and it was giving information that was inaccurate.
mhm.
Yet it had so many likes and so many views that it made me wonder how many people out there are actually believing this.
Oh,
Like the
yeah.
younger generation, a lot of them, they know. Like I asked Quinn about certain videos. She's like, Mommy, that's AI. But if I were to ask my mom about the same video, she probably would think it was real. And so I'm wondering, do you ever have fears about
Mhm,
the voice of our people? And when I say our people, I mean everybody, but
mhm,
just being
mhm,
silenced because of this whole AI and this whole algorithm thing.
mhm. Oh, yeah. That's a real fear. Oh, of our history being lost. Made me think of there's an old video, documentary done by, I'm not supposed to say his name anymore, but I'm saying Bill Cosby. It's called Black History Lost, Stolen, or Strayed. It's ancient. It came out in the early 70s. And actually that's what he was talking about, the misinterpretation of history and trying to do away with it and come up with a new narrative. And of course we know that's what we're undergoing now with DEI. But the issue I have with AI is it hallucinates and it makes things up and it looks so real. And I had a bad experience with that. I mean, because it gives you all these citations and everything. You think, oh, this has to be right. And it's not, you know, and it's being passed off as real information. But no, I lean into African intelligence or ancestral intelligence for my information. And my fear of our history going away or being misconstrued is very real. And that's what motivated me. This commercial here. That's what motivated me to do my project. Uh,
Mhm.
and it's on blackslaverevolts.org. One word, blackslaverevolts.org, where I did two maps, like Google Maps, and each marker tells you about a slave revolt. You open it up, it gives you text, images, some have animations, and they all have scholarly citations. And then the second map looks at 1900 to 1994 and the boycotts and sit-ins and pray-ins and revolutionary armed movements. And one of the reasons I did that, and on that site, there's a tab on slavery. And I actually have 3 PowerPoints that I created that have images from slavery. And of
Mm.
course, the most powerful being from Brazil, because slavery lasted up until 1888. They actually have photos
Mm.
of slaves. So, because what's going on the internet is that slavery didn't exist. And my neighbor was telling me, very grown person, that slavery did not happen. Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is the
Mm.
new narrative that did not happen, that this is being made up. So I made sure I had on the site actual images of slavery, to counter that narrative. Um, and I made it interactive. So this would be my contribution so people can say, no, no, these things really did happen. There really were revolts. We really did have a civil rights movement, because even that's being questioned. And now with our president trying to erase, I mean, he's not
Mm.
hiding it. He's like, I'm trying to erase this history of enslavement and what happened. So that's to me, that's why my project, is so important. Mhm.
So I'm wondering, and you bringing up that project, which is awesome, by the way,
Thank you.
how do you find the courage to keep moving forward? And like, I'm sure that there were people who maybe even questioned, oh, what are you putting us out for? Or I don't know how accurate this is, and what
Mhm.
have you. Like, so I always look at the opposite of fear in part can be courage and being courageous. What allows you to be courageous and to put forth this information?
Mm. AI. Ancestral ancestral information. It's the ancestors. And
Mhm.
actually, we making light of this, but when I was working on it, at different times it had gotten to be a little much. Because the two maps combined have over 600 markers. And like I said, each one of them have scholarly citations, research that I actually did. I didn't use AI. And I think maybe a third of the way into the project, it was getting to me. And I talked to a friend of mine, and he says, "You know what you need to do?" He says, "Every time you get ready to work on it," he says, "call on the ancestors,
Mm.
call them by name, and ask them to help you with it." And that's what I did. And once I start and then thinking too that what this project is doing is giving voice to the ancestors, and it's honoring them because there's so many revolts that we know nothing about. Everybody knows, okay, Nat Turner, Harriet Tubman, but I mean, like I said, on that slavery map, I have over 263 markers of
Mm.
people, and a lot of them were women who actually organized the revolts, and they need to be honored. So I felt in two ways. I felt that the ancestors were leading me, and I also felt like I was honoring the ancestors. And that's what gives me courage or strength.
Mhm.
I would say fortitude and endurance
Yes.
to do this work.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of times we get courage from other people, and that's certainly something to acknowledge. So I want to shift gears a little bit. So in talking about courage and moving forward, what's a dream or a goal that you've been holding on to, and maybe you were a little afraid to chase it, but now you're like, okay, I've done my map, and this is something else that I wanna get after, and I'm not gonna let fear get in my way.
Well, that's a good question. I don't know. There's some things I want to do, but it's not so much fear that's keeping me from doing. It's looks like arduous work.
Yeah,
Do I
yeah,
want to do all of this at this
yeah.
point in time? I'm always looking, I'm always learning,
Mhm,
and I'm always looking for ways to enlighten other people about our history. That's something I've always wanted to do. I mean, since I was in college. So I thought one way to do that would be to do tours
mhm,
and take people on Black History tours, maybe do Underground Railroad, the Civil War, civil rights, and but it just seems like so much work.
yeah, and I think that I
Anything
mean
you do when you have to organize more than
yeah,
two people, it's like, kind of want to do that. I want to do more traveling. And of course, in the last 2 decades with terrorism and all, traveling has become challenging and difficult,
mhm.
getting around through different countries, and can't think of anything else I really wanna do. I guess that must be good, huh?
Yeah, that means you've done a lot, and what you have. I always think about, wow, Ife's doing so much. I'm not sure if you remember when I had the opportunity to join you on one of the tours that you hosted through the college,
Uh-huh.
and we got to go to Washington D.C. I mean, you had us going everywhere. Like you're like we squeezing it all in. So I think that what you said, it makes sense though, but I would say possibly one of the fears, which it may not be the proper word, but I think for me, if I know something has a lot of work involved, then I might secretly fear not the work necessarily, but wanting to give up and not
Mm,
complete the task because of the work.
yes.
And there's this part of me that's like, well, I don't want to just quit. And so then I'm like, well, if it's a lot of work and I don't want to quit, do I want to get started with it? So I'll think about it from that standpoint a lot of times.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
and I mean, I know that something else that, and I'm not sure if this is an issue for you, but I will say it does come up for me sometimes, is that as we get older, our bodies are changing, and the fear, I think, of aging in this society, it
Mm.
seems that so many people are obsessed with youth. And I'm not saying that from a place of judgment, but I think that that's something that's natural, and even though I try not to make that the focus, it certainly does creep up sometimes. Do you ever fear the idea of getting older or looking older?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That is real. Some of my friends say you're so vain, but my position is if you have some money, and not even a whole lot of money, just some money, there's no reason for you to look bad.
Mm, mm.
You can get fillers, Botox. I believe in that. I mean, and some people say that's not natural. Well, God made doctors.
Mm. Oh my goodness.
Oh,
Oh.
oh, yeah, yeah. I only have and I think this is a race thing. I think this is a thing. Well, now a lot of young women are doing this in their 20s and they don't really need to do it, but they're doing it.
Mm-mm.
But I think a lot of white women have always taken advantage of these things. And black women, we just well, you say black don't crack. I'll just go along with it. But no, no, I believe in that. I'm trying to stay young and looking as long as I can
Mhm.
between
Mhm.
Miss Clairol and Botox in the gym. I'm working on it. I'm not
Mhm.
gonna
Mhm. And I will say that, I mean, I've never gotten anything done like, cosmetic or anything,
mm,
but I'd be lying if I said that's not one of the reasons I go to the gym. I mean, for me,
right,
functional fitness is important, being able to get up out of my seat
right.
or uh, get in a squat and pop back up or different things of that nature.
Take a
But something else
shower.
yes, exactly. Even put my
Hmm.
sock on
Right.
standing up. Like there's certain things that I want to be able
That's
to
right.
do.
Hmm.
And something just happened recently, actually. I am at the professional development meeting, and the person who's seated right next to me turns to me and says, "Was your last name Harris?" And I tell them, "Yes, that was my last name." And she said, "I was your student." And I said, "You
Oh.
were?" And I looked at her and I'm like, her face looks familiar. And she says, "Yeah, I was in your class about 17 years ago." And so
Mm,
when I looked at her and she looked at me and she's like, "Wow, saying that you still look good and this, that, and the other." And that made me feel good.
hmm.
And she's saying, "You were always kind." But I think about that. I want someone, I know this sounds superficial. I want someone to be able to recognize me.
Right.
Like there is a possibility she might have said, "Oh my gosh, how you've aged. 17 years. A lot can happen in
Yeah,
17
yeah, that's a lot of
years."
time. Mhm,
Yes, and
mhm.
and for her to still be able to recognize me, I
Right,
said,
right.
"Okay, I must be doing
Mhm.
something all right." She
Right. Yeah, you do
recognized
look
me.
the same. You look the same as the first day I met you. Mhm.
I'll take it.
Mhm. Yeah, you
So,
look good.
so so I mentioned, sitting across from a former student of mine. If you could sit across from yourself when you were in your 20s, what would you tell her about something that you were losing sleep over?
Where do you come up with these questions from? Man, what?
I'm always thinking.
What? What?
Well, I could tell you for me that because if we're talking about when I was in my early 20s or so, I wasn't married at that point. And it was something on my to-do list, and at the time, I was dating, who's now my husband. I was dating Sean, and I won't even say dating, we were in a committed relationship, and so that's when my mom is putting on the pressure, "Do you think he's ever gonna marry you, and what's going on, and this and that," because we were together for a good while before we got married. We were together for
Mhm.
11 years before we got married,
Wow.
and so I think I would there were people who would say, "Oh, I would just dump him," or and mind you, I'm glad I didn't listen to any of those people. But I think that I would tell my 25-year-old self in terms of the relationship, that do you see a future? Try your best. And one thing I will say that I did do that I'm happy about is that I didn't allow too many people to be involved in my affairs. And when I say affairs,
Mhm.
not you know what I mean. Like I think
Mhm.
sometimes people, even at my age, they involve so many people in their relationship and then they wonder why it doesn't work out. So
Right.
that's something I would probably tell my 20 something year old self that you're doing okay. Don't get caught up in what other people are saying because this
Mhm.
is what's working for you and something else might work for them. I think even with schooling, because at that point, that was around the time when I was getting hired to actually work at the college. And so when I think about that, I remember saying to myself, I should be further along in this, that, and the other. And I had to remind myself, and I would say that to myself back then, as long as you're in the race, as long as you're moving forward, regardless of the pace, just keep going. Because I think sometimes we're looking at the pace so much, like, I'm
Mhm.
not here, I'm not there. So that's something that I would tell myself is you're getting there. So don't get caught up in how fast you're going. You'll still
Mhm.
get there.
Good advice.
Mhm.
I think when I was in my 20s, even up to 30s, I had very low self-esteem.
Mm. Well, I'm there with you on that too,
I
sadly, yeah.
yeah, I just y- I didn't believe that I was enough, you know, which was one of the driving forces of wanting to get married, to to have a man validate me, you know, so that I couldn't matter. I didn't believe that I was a very supportive, good daughter.
Mm.
I just did what I had to do, and I didn't really, and I tell people this is kind of odd, that I really didn't have any career goals.
Mm.
All I wanted to do was get married and have children, which I'm not saying is less than, but in terms of a career, no, I didn't even, I couldn't see myself as having a successful career or any career. I went to school because my mother made me.
Mm.
I went to college. I didn't even really look for colleges, try to get ready for the SATs or any of that. I had a friend who was going to Lincoln University because she wanted to be a lawyer, and that's where Thurgood Marshall went. So when my mother told me I had to go to college, but I couldn't leave the state because I was too young, because I graduated high school a year early, so I was only 17. Um, I said, "Well, I'll just go to Lincoln," which was really, that was the only school. Was that the only school I applied to? Yeah, I think it was.
Mm.
I went to Lincoln, and again, What are you gonna major in? Well, my roommate was a political science major. My mother wanted me to be a judge. She wanted me to skip being a lawyer, just be a judge. So I majored in political science, and I took constitutional law, and I didn't do very well. So the lawyer bit went out the window. Even though I had professors that said I could have gone on into law, but I took Black history, and that just opened up a whole world to me. I was amazed. I didn't even know I was Black until I got into college.
Mm,
And that was the first time that I ever had any inkling of a career objective. Because once I start taking history courses, I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to open up a school. You look at my yearbook. My goal was to open up a school for Black
mm,
studies. That's what I wanted to do. Because it was like so much history and the stories were fascinating. And I'm like, 12 years of school, I never had any of that. All I knew was Martin Luther King and the peanut guy. That was it, you
mm,
know. And so I forgot what we was talking about. So so if I was to talk to my 20-year-old self at that point, even though I came upon that realization, again, it must have been ancestral driven or God driven, putting me into situations, I would have probably gotten there earlier if I had the mindset of believing you are enough. And as Maya Angelou said, "You're more than enough."
mhm,
You know, if I would have believed that in my 20s, even beyond career, I think a lot of the decisions I made, I would not have made.
mm,
They were very ill-informed
mm.
because I didn't believe in my worth.
But look at you
Mhm.
now.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm not in your classrooms, but I have a strong suspicion that you've had several students who have been in your classroom who may have been where you were, and you helped to offer them some guidance without even realizing it.
Mm.
And they may have had their own set of fears and everything, and just like that, they're in your classroom
Mhm.
and you've changed the trajectory for them.
Yeah, like mine
Mhm.
was for me. Mhm,
Yeah. Mhm.
and then going on to graduate school, man, I had such good teachers, and I was very, very blessed because I went to Clark Atlanta University, and it is only one of 2 to this present day institutions that offer PhD in political science that focus on the Black experience.
Mm. That must make you feel proud.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yes, I got a lot of history to the point now I refer to myself as an Africologist because
I
I
love it.
know I know a lot, a little about
Mhm.
a lot of things. You mention a country or something. I if there are Black people involved, I probably know a little something about them, a little something, something. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, but yeah, it was through my exposure. My professors were involved in the civil rights movement. Some were in the African revolutionary movement. Again, which was my impetus of doing that second map. Because I got that from them.
Mm.
Mhm.
So be before we wrap up, I just wanna also say that, I really enjoy just learning so much about, your journey, and so I'm just wondering if your journey was that of a dog breed, what breed would you be and why?
I like the Jack Russell. Is that right?
Uh-huh. Yes.
I was a fan of Frasier before I found out he was a major supporter of Trump, but
Mm.
but I like his brand. I like that dark kinda quick, comedy,
Mhm.
and I watched that show, and that dog was just phenomenal. I guess it was the training, but what got me so much about that dog was the dog would listen. It seemed like he was listening. Frasier would talk, he would look right in the Frasier's face, just just stare at him, uh, and so intensely, and that's how I am. Some people sometimes I even stare, which I shouldn't, but I'm an intense listener. I really am. I really listen to people and think about things before I do it. So that dog was so attentive. I really like that about
Mhm.
him. I said I wanted to get one, but
Yeah.
my niece is a dog person,
Mhm.
and she told me that that dog wasn't good for old people. I'm like,
Mm.
thank you very much, because she said it has high energy.
Mhm.
And, you have to be very active with that dog, and she's looking at me like, "Auntie, I don't know about you. You need something else.
Mm.
You need a slow dog."
Oh!
Yeah, thank
So I'm
you.
I'm wondering, you said Jack Russell for you. What breed do you think I would be and why?
For you, I would say a standard poodle.
Mhm.
Those are the bigger ones, right?
Yes.
Mhm. Because they're so beautiful.
Oh.
Oh, you are just so beautiful. And, the ones I have been around, again, they're attentive. They're, well-trained. They seem to, like, listen to people and follow instructions, and, um, they're just to me, they're just really just gorgeous. With that stature,
Mhm.
I don't know if people always keep them groomed or something, but they always look good. So, yeah, they actually they stand out. Mhm, and
I
that's you.
love that. I'll take it.
You're not one of the crowd. Look, I know, and you know that I know a lot of people. I know a lot you've been to one of my Kwanzas, I know a
Yes.
lot of people. And when I can say that you're not one of the crowd, you really stand out. You have your own drummer, like we used to say. You have your own goal, and the way you do things is not ordinary. And it's something to be applauded. To be an individual, especially in these days and time, and to be proud of yourself. To have that pride is astounding. So that's what I would say about you. Mhm.
Oh, thank you so much, Ife. That means so much coming from you. It really does. And so I mean, like for to me, for today's episode, it definitely felt like a master class in perspective. And I feel like you reminded us about how we can navigate and handle different types of
Mhm.
fears, and that it's about the destination. And a lot of times how we can have that vantage point uh as we get to different points in our lives. And so I would say for anyone who is listening or watching this podcast, that my challenge is for you to find someone who you look up to, someone in the community, and ask them one of the questions that I asked today. And you might be surprised by the courage you find in their answers. Also, don't be afraid to share this podcast episode with your friends and family, and follow me on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at Tricks My Dog Taught Me. Until next time, when I get into week 18's poem, You're Not a Whimper, here's a question inspired by my little guy, Zach the toy poodle. We all have fears, but how do you handle them? Take care, and I'll see you next week.